Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, Brother Ebrahim Jadwat. Today's conversation is I want to speak of four intellectual giants that had an effect on the Ummah. So these are some of their books, right? So the first one is Ismail Al-Faruqi. The second one is Muhammad Asad. The third one is Yusuf Al-Qaradawi. And the fourth is Fazlur Rahman Ansari. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, Brother Ebrahim.
Walaikum salam, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
These are the great people that we had the fortune of meeting, some of them, and learning directly from them.
So let's talk first. Okay, so I think before we even start, I forgot to mention. Before we speak of, let's start with Qaradawi. Before we speak of Qaradawi, can you maybe enlighten us about the movement of Ikhwan? Ikhwan al-Muslimin, Hasan Al-Bana, and then we go towards Qaradawi.
Okay, the great movement in the 20th century was the movement of Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin. In the 20s, Imam Hasan Al-Bana, rahimahullah, emerged. He was a school teacher, went through a Sufi training program, but he was deeply affected by the state of the Ummah and the understanding of Islam within the Ummah. The opportunity that he had to engage with the Muslims of the time made him realize that the occupation of Muslim lands was a problem, but that our lack of understanding of the deen and its vision was a greater problem. In other words, we were occupied, the colonial people had occupied us, but we also occupied our mind, and we forgot what was the Quranic message, what was the vision of Islam. So Imam Hasan al-Banna started his movement in Islamia in Egypt, and he started talking to people in those days. The cafes and the tea houses were very popular, so he used to sit in some of these places and talk. And opportunities arose where he could speak to wider audiences. Remember, at that time, the British were still in occupation of Egypt, and King Farouk was the official puppet ruler of Egypt. So Imam Hasan al-Banna, he started to make the Muslims aware of their great destiny role, of the role that they should get back to, so that they become the representatives of Allah on earth. And that required a deep understanding. So he gave his lectures, and each of his lectures, and each of it that's there in his booklets, is worth reading. When I read some of them, I found it difficult to fathom the depth and the challenges that he faced. Imam Hasan al-Banna was so powerful in his approach and so appealing in the way he dealt with it that he attracted people from all over Egypt and then the neighboring countries. So people that were studying at that time, the universities in Egypt, whether it was Al-Azhar or whether it was the American universities, these institutions had students from all over the Arab world, and they all started to listen to Imam Hasan al-Banna, and his following grew, and his training programs grew, and his idea of how to re-establish the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam became such a powerful call that at some point, when they assassinated Imam Hasan al-Banna, it was a sad moment because his vision was now reaching the four corners of the world, and it was an untimely death when they assassinated him. The British at that time, together with the rulers of the time, were fixed on the idea that they should have a continuation of the British rule even after independence. But Imam Hasan al-Banna, in his writings, said that we are not here subservient. We are not here as people that are bowing down to power and authority. We are here to express Islam. His message was very clear. There is no deen and dunya separation. There is no separation of state and ummah. There is no such thing as secular and dini. Those concepts did not exist in the Quran or in the Sunnah. This thing that Muslims, even today, are often taught, you hear them saying, this is secular and this is dini or religious. Where did this idea come from? And why did we absorb such a kufr notion? I call it a kufr notion. That you separate deen and dunya, that you say one is dini ta'lim and the other is secular. Secular means you take God out of it. So that was the challenge to establish not just Islam, but Islam as governance. And when Nasser was in power, he tried so hard to persuade Imam Hasan al-Bana to move away from this and give the opportunity to the secular Arab nationalists and all these people the opportunity to rule.
So in the context of Arab nationalism, right? In the context of Arab nationalism and neo-colonialism after the powers were taken out of Arab lands, because they were never really well, because they just put their puppets in. Yeah. So which organizations, Ikhwan was one of the organizations in the Muslim Ummah that were fighting against Arab nationalism. Were there other organizations in the Ummah on a broad perspective that had the same ideology as the Ikhwan?
Yes, very much so. In Indonesia, which as you know, has the largest population of Muslims in the world, more than 300 million Muslims, the largest population of Muslims, right? They were also under Dutch colonialism. And the Dutch ruled with an iron hand. So the leader of the Islamic movement, Muhammad Nasir was the leader of the Islamic movement in Indonesia. In India, Pakistan, the Jamaat Islami, Maulana Maududi's Jamaat Islami had a similar role to play. In Northwest Africa, there was the head of this great struggle against the Italians, Asad. And these were people, all part of a worldwide Islamic movement rebelling against the foreign powers that were not just ruling over them, but had removed Islam from their lives and their challenges. So that was what Imam Hasan al-Banna was confronted with. And he created a very wide circulation of people that embraced this philosophy, the Islamic movement for Al-Ikhwan and Muslimun. And we had many people from different parts of the Arab world that visited us. For example, Dr. Ahmad Sakar from Lebanon. There was Ahmad al-Qadi from Syria.
These were all Ikhwani people.
People in their own countries following the Ikhwan program. So they all had adopted this Ikhwan al-Muslimun agenda, and in their own countries they were doing the same thing. So it was far-reaching in the 40s and 50s.
What was the Ikhwan's influence in South Africa? I know you brought a few Ikhwani people in South Africa. Number one, what was the reason for your, in the context of the time at that time, what was the reason for your, as the MYM, right, bringing these people down? And what influence did they have? And what organizations came out of it in South Africa?
Okay, so here's the thing. The students that came from the Arab world, post-Second World War, wanted to acquire higher education. So whether they were from Iraq, like Dr. Ahmad Tutunji, Jamal Magdindi, Hisham al-Talib, all these people who went first to Britain, and from Britain they went to America. In Britain they formed forces Federation of Student Islamic Societies all over Britain, including Ireland, where some of our students were studying, Yusuf, so they established these institutions, Islamic societies in the universities. From there, these same people went to America and they formed the Muslim Student Association of US and Canada. The universities of America all had MSA branches, and each of them had a person, outstanding people, right, that were leading them. Ahmad Sakar was in Chicago. Ahmad Tutunji, they were in different places, right? And they all established these branches of the MSA, and they came together under the label of the Muslim Student Association. What is unique about these people is that they were all professional people in their own respective professions. For example, Ahmad Al-Qadi was a medical doctor, so he established the Islamic Medical Association, right? Jamal Barzinji was a person that had economics and Islamic finance. So we have, through him and people like him, we have Islamic banking today. Then we have people like Ahmad Tutunji and Ahmad Sakar. Ahmad Sakar in particular, who came from Lebanon. Ahmad Tutunji came from Iraq. Ahmad Sakar came from Lebanon, from Beirut, Lebanon. And he introduced us to so many, now this is all the work that the NSA was doing in America. So they had a head start. And they said, Ahmad Sakar said, each of the people heading each of these institutions. So for example, through Ahmad Sakar and the people that came after him, right, they established the South African National Zakat Fund, the Islamic Medical Association, Islamic Dawah Movement, the Associated Muslim Accountants and Lawyers, all these people, right, that came from America, from the MSA, and they were the all Ikhwan people. They all came to South Africa and helped us, because when we started the Muslim Youth Movement, one of the things that we felt strongly about was that if Islam is a way of life, then where is it in economics, in education, in training, in development, in science, in technology, all of these things, where is it? And there the answer came from these people.
So what Ikhwan did, we know Islam is a way of life, but what Ikhwan did basically fill the dots, so to speak.
Correct.
To see
and made, for example,
a living Islam.
A living Islam. So medicine, a living Islam. Yeah. Economics, a living Islam.
Education.
So all of this, you see, until this happened, Muslims in South Africa, and with humility and with not showing off at all, we didn't have these institutions. We had madrasa, we had masjid, we had ghurba, burying the people, with hafiz, but no institutions where we could establish a way of life based on Quranic principles. So the Zakat Fund, which is a enormous institution, and until that time, Muslims extending their hands this way to receive. And Mahmoud may Allah bless him, who took up the Zakat Fund challenge, said that we must take all these hands that are stretched out this way and turn it around from receiving to giving. And so today we have South African Zakat Fund with a budget of 450 million and 42 offices came out of this. And came out of what? From the same people that came from America, from MSA, and from the Ikhwan, who helped us to establish this.
So these are the four personalities we're going to cover. So first, this is the book that I have on Yusuf Qaradawi. So how is Yusuf Qaradawi connected to the Ikhwan movement? Who is he? What's his background? And what's his contribution to the Ummah?
Okay, Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, you can say he's the foremost thinker in the 20th century of Islam. He has a website on which thousands of questions are put to him, right? And he responds to them. So whether it's the smallest thing or the biggest thing. Qaradawi came from Egypt. He was a professor at Al-Asad, but He was also a senior executive member of the Al-Ikhwan Muslimun. And when the time when Nasser was cracking down on Al-Ikhwan and had imprisoned Sayyid Qutb, right, and on the basis that Sayyid Qutb simply turned away from establishing Islam as a governance, right, he just changed that idea. He said, I'll save your life. But Sayyid Qutb rahimahullah refused to do that. So he accepted death rather than changing Deen al-Islam. And one of the inspiration and teachers of those people at that time was the phenomenon of Yusuf Al-Qaradawi. He was a giant of a scholar, a mind that traversed every school of thought, and he was familiar with everything that was taught by people, even in Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan, India, everywhere in the Arab world. So today, you will see that Yusuf Al-Qaradawi, who of course is in exile, because he had to run from Egypt, like a lot of other people, and he's housed in Qatar. And Qatar has housed him and earned the ire of the Gulf Cooperation Council, that's Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Egypt, earned their anger by housing this man, Sheikh Yusuf Al-Qaradawi, a man that was responsible for establishing, creating the idea of Al Jazeera, establishing institutions.
So he created the idea of Al Jazeera.
Yes, and Al Jazeera came from him. Right. Also, the organization in Kuwait which we have called International Islamic Charitable Organization, of which I'm a member and a trustee, to establish an institution taking money not from government, from philanthropists, from business people. And his goal was, when he started this 20 years ago, with 100 million. And he said, in 10 years' time, I want this fund to become $1 billion. Right? And they invested the money and so forth. So Sheikh Yusuf Al-Qaradawi is the most respected scholar in the entire Muslim world. There is nobody that is equivalent to him. Everybody that would claim that they are this and they are that, they are nothing. And he's a very, very humble man. The other thing is that Sheikh Yusuf Al-Qaradawi, in his whole Jummah khutbah, which is heard by 50, 60, 100 million people all over the Arab world, right, is a rare wake-up call, right, and he earns. So one of the conditions that the GCC countries put on Qatar, they were against Qatar and they put a blockade, as you know. The whole world knows that these GCC countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, all of these countries put a blockade on Qatar, and they gave the reasons. Reason number one, chuck Yusuf Al-Qaradawi out of Qatar. Don't house him. He is the instrument of all our problems. Number two, close up Al Jazeera.
Close Al Jazeera.
Close Al Jazeera, right. Number three, okay, maybe there's cooperation between neighbors, right? So one of the neighbors that they happen to have in the area, it happens to be Iran, whether you like it, and they share. Qatar and Iran share common gas and oil fields. So they are partners. Close down that. Close down so many things. Take the Turkish contingent that is there in Qatar. Qatar asked Turkey to establish a base in Qatar. Why? For fear of what those people around him are going to do. So that's why they closed that down. And the Turkish presence in Qatar is a very big help against the blockade. As soon as they put the blockade, the Turks went and closed up the area, protected the area, and started sending shiploads, together with Iran and together with other countries, shiploads of help, right? And allowed the air spaces to be used. So Yusuf Al-Qaradawi was number one on the list of the GCE countries led by Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE, and Egypt, that if they want to have a normal relations with them, chuck this man out. So 40 to 50 million, maybe more people listen to his Jummah khutbahs every Friday. And just to give you a taste, as you know, I mentioned this to you before, in his khutbah he raises the level of Islam and Muslims to the point where Imam Hasan Al-Bana and Sayyid Qutb Kuhum Hidayah, where he would say, for example, that the Muslim world are the consumers of everything and the producers of nothing. What an indictment, what a shame. But he's waking you up. So understand that in our understanding, generally, you could write to him on his website and ask him questions, and I'm sure you would get answers from him that may or may not agree with the popular sometimes opinions of some scholars, but whatever he has said is deep in deen, deep in hadith and deep in Quran. So I would say to you, may Allah bless him, may Allah keep him alive. I haven't seen him for 10 years. I must just tell you something while we at it. I was in a meeting in Kuwait and he was there and I was making wudu with him and he took off his imama and he left it on the side, and then when he went out and he was leading the prayer. So when he finished the prayer, I brought his imama and I gave it to him. So I said, why? He said, no, the Prophet said, this is the crown of a Muslim. Sometimes he takes it off to pray to his Lord. So it's something that we have to understand. You don't have to agree with him, but it is really worth it to any searcher of knowledge on dimensions of Islam, Quran and Hadith, to look at Imam Professor Yusuf Al-Qaradawi. May Allah bless him, may Allah keep him alive, may Allah allow him to serve thee.
So this is the book.
Where you can get it from?
I got it from Al-Ansari, but you can search for it on the internet. Right? Yusuf Al-Qaradawi, Global Mufti. Next one, intellectual giant Ismail Al-Faruqi. This book is Islam, Religion, Practice, Culture and World Order. He's the founder, am I correct, of the Triple IT. So explain to him. No, I think you give a better explanation.
See, Ismail Al-Faruqi is Palestinian, right? When you look at him, he's a person that has got a huge amount of knowledge, and he was made not just professor, but head of religions at Temple University.
Okay. In the States?
In the States. Temple University, as you know, is one of the 5 premier universities.
Right.
To be made head of Islamic studies is one thing, but to be made head of Department of Religions, all religions, shows the level and depth of this man and his understanding. So he was made in charge of Department of Religions, and we had the good fortune of sending some of our students to Temple University. Abdul Qadir Tayyib is one of them, Mohsin Ibrahim is another one. So a few of our students went there, Temple University. Now, he was also Palestinian.
What was his background?
He was from Palestine. He studied in Beirut. From there he went to America and did his master's PhD. So in Islamic studies, in religion, in culture and all that, right? The things that he became famous for. Now, the biggest problem that our cousins had with him, he was an intellectual giant, and he was able to articulate in such a brilliant manner. This man was able to articulate the Palestinian cause in such a brilliant manner that he left them floored, the Zionists. The secret of the Zionists is that whenever the Palestinians spoke, they were the most weakest people to communicate the Palestinian message. They could not articulate that message. They were not able to speak properly, correctly, dynamically. Right?
I noticed that always, even from a young age,
Yes.
people representing the Palestinians in articulation.
So you were your worst enemy, right? And here comes this man. And when he stood up on platforms to present the Palestinian message, they were speechless. They could not respond. And he was so powerful, but also so fair. They could not find anything in his responses and in his speeches. For example, Ismail Al-Faruqi wrote a tripartite thesis on who has the biggest claim on Jerusalem. Who has the biggest claim on Jerusalem? So when Ismail Al-Faruqi wrote this, he wrote on behalf of the Jews, they claim. And if a Jew read what he said about the Jewish claim, they would say that he articulated the best message and best claim for the Jew. He did the same for the Christians. And when he articulated the message of the Christian claim on Jerusalem, they said he could not have been a better person. And then he made the claim on behalf of Islam, the Muslims. And they realized that the only people that could lay claim on the basis of intellectual understanding, historical facts, on the basis of a worldview, on the basis of revelation of Islam. So his intellect, he was so powerful intellectually, and they could not bear the thought of such a person moving around America, standing up in platforms, presenting the Palestinian cause, that they assassinated him in his home with his dear wife. Both of them were assassinated by the Zionists. By the way, Ismail Al-Faruqi has written the Encyclopedia of Islam. Encyclopedia of Islam, right? So understand, he's a very, very knowledgeable person. To write an encyclopedia is not easy, and he has done it. And his wife, Lamia Al-Faruqi, also a professor, she's written the book on Muslim art and architecture and all that. It's another great book. But right now, this man who was responsible, his understanding of what Muslims are confronted with led him to the conclusion that it's the Muslim mind that is the problem. That we are backward because we have not developed this mind. So how to catch up? How to catch up in this dilemma that we have? Because Muslims suddenly found themselves sandwiched between a glorious past and the heralding of an uncertain future.